A gem is something tiny, but precious and beautiful, and this camera is exactly that. There's wide, then there is super wide. This is the Hasselblad SWC, also known as the Super Wide C. And over the past year, it has become one of my favorite cameras to use. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. You see, I found myself gravitating towards something wider. When I first started photography as a kid, I loved my 70 to 200 f4 IS lens. Then, when I hit my later teen years, I just loved the 50mm perspective, clean and classic. And by my early to mid 20s, I was all in on 35mm, and then 28, and now over the past few years, I've just been in love with the 21mm focal length. Now, I've made a number of videos talking about 21mm on small format, but today we're going up in size to 6x6. The Hasselblad SWC is a tiny medium format camera that uses 120 film. First introduced at Photokina in 1954, it was originally called the Supreme Wide Angle. Right from the start, it housed a Zeiss 38mm f4.5 Biogon lens. Its optical design, with 8 elements in 5 groups, remained pretty much unchanged throughout its history. Till today, 70 years since its introduction, it's still one of the best lens designs I've ever used. So how does a camera, in this case the one I have, made in 1961, hold up till today? Well, amazingly. And it all has to do with the lens. This lens, a 38mm f4.5 lens on 6x6, which has a crop factor of 0.55, is roughly equivalent to a 21mm f2.5 lens on small format. And the first thing that I love about this lens is that the pictures that it makes are pretty much practically distortion free. You don't see any significant bulging when you place verticals or horizontal lines at the edges of the frame, nor do you see any strange waviness going on. Now, distortion might not be a huge issue if you scan and you use Lightroom or Photoshop, but if you darkroom print, then distortion matters a whole lot. Besides that, despite being almost 65 years old, this lens resolves so well. All the pictures that you're seeing here today were scanned with a 100 megapixel sensor, and when cropped to a square, that's about 8000 by 8000 pixels. And the reason why I chose the non-T-Star version of this camera is how it handles backlight, especially when it comes to black and white film. Because when I shoot in monochrome, I don't really want a lens to hold together too much. I personally want pictures that feel a bit more fragile, a bit looser and more raw, more classic in that sense. And this lens does just that. It holds together just enough, but not too much. The other thing that I love about this camera is that it is fully mechanical. So no electronics, no meter. It functions pretty much like a mechanical watch. As long as you keep the internals serviced once every few years, and as long as you're using it regularly, it's just going to keep working. And this has done so for over 60 plus years. Besides that, what makes this camera unique is that the camera body and the lens is pretty much one. If you take out the film back behind, you'll notice that the shutter is actually built in to the lens. And in order for the shutter to work in the lens, this camera needed a leaf shutter. Now, the difference between a leaf shutter and other more commonly used shutters, let's say the focal plane shutter used in a Leica, is that the leaf shutter is much more quiet. Take a listen to how the shutter sounds. And also because it functions fundamentally differently. A focal plane shutter moves from one side of the frame to the other, whereas a leaf shutter opens and closes all at once. You get the benefit of faster flash sync speeds. Besides that, this camera also has a really cool feature that I personally find really innovative, and that is a mechanical depth of field scale. So when you stop down the aperture on the lens, you will see the two red distance markings in the lens move as well, indicating what will be in focus, for example, from infinity to 8 feet. Now, one thing to take note of when it comes to zone focusing is that these scales were developed based on old standards. For example, if you're taking a picture of something very far away, let's say at infinity, and instead of focusing to infinity, you place your focusing so that infinity lines up with the furthest distance away, your picture won't necessarily be in complete focus if you scan at a tremendously high resolution. On the top of the camera, you'll find a threaded shutter release that will allow you to use a cable for long exposures. Next to the shutter button, you'll find the cold shoe, and that's where you put your viewfinder in. And what's really interesting about this viewfinder is that on the right side, you see your framing, and that will allow you to compose. But on the left side is actually a mirrored prism that allows you to look through the viewfinder without taking the camera away from your eye and still see the bubble level. And finally, at the bottom of the camera, you'll find a place to mount your tripod plate. And this camera has interchangeable backs as well, just like the 500cm, which allows you to use black and white film and color film and change that out all at a moment's notice. Now, there are some limitations to this camera, and I'm sure you would have noticed that this camera only uses an external viewfinder. So you don't actually get to see the picture that you're making. And because of that, there is no parallax compensation, meaning if you're taking a picture of something very close, let's say 1 meter away, your camera might be pointing too low. So you do need to mentally note to compensate for something close by tilting the camera up just very slightly. And because you don't get to see the actual picture that you're making, there are also no focusing aids, meaning no focusing patch or no split prisms. You do have to focus by estimation. Now, you could use external distance measures like a laser tool, but I personally don't, because with a lens this wide, you get a lot in focus. So all you need to do is really get used to estimating focusing distances and you'll be fine. Limitations aside, this camera has been one that I've been really enjoying, and there are a few reasons for that. First off, shooting medium format. With 12 shots a roll, I've been enjoying the intentionality of making just one or at most two pictures of a frame. I find myself in life noticing something catches my attention. And because I only have 12 shots in a roll, the filter of what do I make a picture of is even tighter, and the bar is that much higher. And it's gotten me more attuned to what actually matters to me. Now, it isn't a snapshot camera, for example, compared to the Ricoh GR1, which I love. It's not a camera that I would just make many pictures of a scene with. But when the time comes, when I know that, hey, there's a picture here, I take this out and it has yet to let me down. But besides that, the main reason why this camera has been amazing is its perspective. I've talked about the 21mm before, but there is a big difference with such a wide angle in a 3:2 aspect ratio compared to the square. You see, with the 3:2, because it is longer than it is tall, the size of a 21mm frame inevitably get more skewed on a square because it is even all the way around. The amount of warping or pulling towards the edges of the frame is uniformed, and I found that it has allowed me to shoot in a much more natural way. And it has opened up to me possibilities with my pictures that I just couldn't get elsewhere. It also allows you to easily crop the sides to get a 4:5 aspect ratio. And by doing that, you'll be shooting approximately at 23mm at 4:5, which is a beautiful focal length as well. And that ability to get 4:5 pictures from this camera with more than enough resolution is another huge upside. I've also found myself shooting a lot more in indoor spaces. And that's where I find that this camera really shines. And capturing the environment with a subject is what this camera does beautifully. So its size, its weight, the lens, the perspective that it shoots, the silentness of its shutter, the fact that there are no batteries at all, there are so many things going for this camera that makes it beautiful. And I love it so much that I chose it to be my primary camera in documenting one of the most significant milestones in my life so far. But that's a story for another time. I hope you enjoyed today's review. If you want more videos like this, subscribe to stay tuned. Jeremy here, and I'll see you in the next video.